Hello, this is Burhain Selassie, the Orthodox Catholic one here on YouTube. Today, but today's video will be about Tafsir Ibn Kathir, his commentary on Surah 355, which is called Al-Imran, which I'm pretty sure is supposed to refer to Moses' father, though you kind of wonder at times. But anyway, it's Tafsir Ibn Kathir. It's from Volume 2, and it's going to be on again 355. And so just a little about Ibn Kathir. He's a respected Muslim commentator on the Quran, well known for his tafsir, which is widely considered authoritative. He lived in the 14th century of our Christian era, also known as AD, or in the year 700, this 8th century for the Muslims. But anyway, he was a Shafi'i. He was just a Sunni Muslim, essentially. But anyway, he's famous for his commentary. But back on this case, so I'm going to start on page 171 of volume 2 of his work. You could also find it on the Q Tafsir website. Anyway, it's 355, which says, "And purify, save you from those who disbelieve." And you can see this in the Quran, the surah, which is found right here. Here's the Arabic text, and it says, and this is the Saki International, "When Allah said, O Jesus," or they call him Isa, "indeed I will take you and raise you to myself and purify you from those who disbelieve and make those who follow you in the submission of Allah superior to those who disbelieve until the day of the resurrection." So that's what it says. Anyway, I'm going to read what Ibn Kathir says. So anyway, he says, "This is what happened when Allah raised Isa, Jesus, to heaven. His followers divided into sects and groups. Some of them believed in what Allah sent Jesus as, a servant of Allah, his messenger, and the son of his female servant. However, some of them went to the extreme over Isa, believing that he was the son of Allah. Some of them said that Isa was Allah himself, while others said that he was one of the Trinity. Allah mentioned these false creeds in the Quran and refuted them." So I'm going to address this point right here, which is absurd. He says some of them went to extremes. The funny thing is they accept the Injil, the four Gospels, and guess what the four Gospels say? For instance, says, talking about that they believe he's the son of Allah. That's absurd. But let's see what the Injils say. Here's all the times this Son of God appears, and it's referring to Jesus. "If thou be the Son of God," this is Satan trying to tempt Jesus. He calls him the Son of God. That's in Matthew 4, and you can see the verses here, 4, 6. And then this is the demons. They're terrified over Jesus. They say, "Jesus, Son of God, art thou come hither to torment us before the time?" And so they're terrified over it. And then people are confessing that you are the Son of God. His own disciples call him the Son of God. And then high priest asked him if he's the Christ, the Son of God. So they expected him to be, in a sense, the Son of God. And furthermore, even Mark's Gospel, the Gospel according to Mark, starts out saying that Jesus, the Son of God. So his own disciples call him the Son of God. Even Jibril, the angel Gabriel, the archangel Gabriel, in Luke 1:35, I should say, it says that he will be called the Son of God. The devil again calls him Son of God even. And then here you have even people in John 1 calling him the Son of God. Nathanael, his disciple, his apostle, says, "Rabbi, thou art the Son of God, the King of Israel." And then even Jesus says that he is the Son of God in John 5:25. "Amen, amen, I say to you that the hour cometh now, and now is, when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and they that hear shall live." And he could go on and on and on. So there's no doubt that Jesus is the Son of God. He calls himself the Son of God. Other people call him Son of God. his own disciples call him the Son of God. But Ibn Kathir thinks, oh, they went to the extreme. These people, they're crazy, implying that, oh, this came a little while after. But no, that's absurd. That's not the case at all. And as far as calling him Allah himself, let's go back. We have John 1:1. Let's hop over to the Gospel of John. We see that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then skip over to verse 14. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw his glory, the glory as it were of the only begotten of God, full of grace and truth. So Jesus is called God by his own disciple. And again, he also calls him God in John 20:28. We see right here Thomas, one of the 12 apostles of Jesus, or as they call him, Isa. It says, Thomas answered and said to him, my Lord and my God. And this was in response to Jesus, who told him, put thy fingers here and see my hands, and bring hither thy hand and put it in my side, and be not faithless but believe. And so he did this. He said, my Lord and my God. And Jesus says, because thou hast seen, Thomas, thou hast believed. Blessed art they who have not seen and have believed. So Jesus is called God by his own disciple. And then we can read lots of other writings and also notice that these things are here that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. So those two claims that Ibn Kathir makes, that with some extremist statements, are actually what the Injils say. And this is what every text of the Injil says, is that Jesus is, first of all, the Son of God. You can't find one text that somehow just skips over this or deletes it. They all say this. This is very basic for Christianity. Even very primitive Christianity, first century, everybody says this. If you don't say Jesus is the Son of God, you're not a Christian in any sense. You don't even believe in the Gospels. So it's the burdens on the Muslims to provide a gospel that refuses to apply this title to Jesus, that is actually authentic from the first century. And the claim that Jesus did not claim to be God and stuff like that is absolutely false, because I showed you John 5, that even calling himself the Son of God, calling himself the Son means he's of the same substance, the same species as his Father. And that Jesus did not object to his own apostles calling him Allah, as Muslims would have it. As far as the Trinity, Trinitarianism is just a logical conclusion from this. So instead of saying there's three gods, we just say there's one God in three persons, because they all have the same will, and they all derive, the three persons derive in the first person, the Father. Anyway, Ibn Kathir goes on and says, Allah mentioned these false creeds in the Quran and refuted them. Of course he refuted them, but I mean, I can't really say that he refuted them. He just denied them, rejected them, or at least this is what they claim God said. But the Quran demonstrates very little knowledge on Christian theology, and even lesser knowledge on Christian, the Bible itself. It mostly relies on word of mouth. But anyway, going on, Ibn Kathir says, the Christians remained like this until the end of the 3rd century CE, when the Greek king called Constantine became a Christian for the purpose of destroying Christianity. Okay, first of all, it's the 4th century that he actually became a Christian, and I guess you could call him Greek. He's more from the Balkans, but Constantine did not become Christian for the purpose of destroying Christianity. First of all, his mother was a Christian, and was hoping he would become a Christian also. And on top of that, it was generally regarded as being a result of a battle that he experienced. And finally, Constantine did not actually finish his conversion to Christianity until his deathbed, which was much later. We actually had to be baptized to be considered a Christian. But anyway, Ibn Kathir goes on and says, Constantine was either a philosopher or just plain ignorant. Now, Constantine was actually the son of another emperor before him, and he was mostly a military child. He grew up in the military, rose through the ranks, and yes, he did study philosophy. He studied Latin and Greek. He did study philosophy, but to call him a philosopher is well above his pay raise, since he was predominantly interested in the military. Anyway, going on, Ibn Kathir says, Constantine changed the religion of Isa by adding to it and deleting from it. I'm curious on what this is. Anyway, he goes on and says, he established the rituals of Christianity and the so-called Great Trust, which is in fact the Great Treachery. First of all, I don't know where he gets this stuff. You can find the rituals. There's actually historical evidence for like our worship back in the catacombs, back when we were persecuted before Constantine. We lived underground. We worshipped underground in secret, and we have like evidence of it. We have pictures. We have altars and stuff like that. And the tombs of saints. We have early Christian writings written before Constantine, showing that we did have all these rituals before Constantine came around. So the Ibn Kathir statement is baseless, and I have no clue what this great trust is that he's referring to. Maybe it's just my ignorance, but I've tried to look for it, and I have no idea what it is. Anyway, he goes on and says, he allowed them to eat the meat of swine. Okay, this claim is absurd because Christians, it was long established that Christians could eat the meat of swine, that we don't have these dietary laws like the Jews, or that the Muslims would later adopt again. In fact, the Apostle Paul, which Muslims largely reject, though some of them kind of say that he was one of the people who started Christianity in Rome, that he was part of Allah's will. But anyway, even Paul, who is first century Christian, whether you accept him or not, actually does say, for instance, that we're not held to these food laws, these kosher laws, as some call them. He says in verse Colossians 2:16, and this is in the New Testament, let no one then pass judgment on you in matters of food and drink, or with regard to festival, or new moon, or Sabbath. These things are shadows of things to come. Their reality belongs to Christ. So they're just shadows. They're to point to Christ. And now that we have Christ, who is the reality, it was just sort of like a shadow of Christ. Those things. And since we have Christ, we have no need for all of this old stuff. Its purpose was already served. And so we don't have to worry about all these special kosher laws. Don't eat pork. That's not an issue anymore. But anyway, so that part's false. There's no concept of Christians being forbidden to eat meats. Before that, of swine, that is. The only exception might be is among Ethiopian Christians. Because of their Jewish ancestry, they tended to keep some of more of the Jewish laws, despite the fact that they did accept the writings of Paul. Other than that, maybe some Judaizing sects in the first couple centuries, but they were extreme minority of Christians, and it would be absurd to say that this was the majority or even a significant number. Because at this time, I mean, they were a minority. They were mostly in areas that were like Israel, Palestine. That's where they would be, and there's no indication in writings or anything else that they had a huge minority, or at least a sizable group, as Ibn Kathir seems to imply by saying that he allowed them to eat the meat, which was they already did. And then Ibn Kathir says that Constantine changed the direction of prayer that Isa established to the east. Okay, this is absurd because, first of all, we have nothing about Jesus telling us which direction we should pray. There's nothing in the New Testament. There's nothing in the Gospels. I'm not even aware of anything in tradition, but we do pray facing the east. Perhaps he did tell us to pray face the east, but we have no indication of him telling us any other direction to pray, and the burden of proof is on Ibn Kathir and Muslims to establish that this was changed. Originally, the Jews prayed facing towards the temple in Jerusalem. This was established by King Solomon in the Old Testament. And since, we don't recognize the temple anymore as being significant, we consider our bodies, and most of all Christ, to be the temple, and we expect his resurrection, and not his resurrection, his return, his second coming at the end of time, and we believe he'll return in the east. And also the term east is actually a title of Christ himself in prophecy. So that's why we pray facing east traditionally. But regardless, whatever the case is, burden of proof is on Ibn Kathir that Jesus changed, or that Constantine changed the direction of praying. And it says Constantine built churches for Isa. Okay, that's true. And added 10 days to the fast as compensation for a sin that he committed, as claimed. What the heck? What are they talking about? I have no idea what this added 10 days to a fast is about. No clue whatsoever, so I really can't comment on that. I don't know if he's talking about Lent or what, but I don't know what this 10 days is. So the religion of Esau became the religion of Constantine, who built more than 12,000 churches, temples, and monasteries for the Christians, as well as the city that bears his name, Constantinople, Istanbul. He kind of splits up churches and temples, but the fact is they're the same thing. In that era, they considered the churches temples. I don't know why he calls them. It seems to imply that they're separate. But anyway, I have no idea about this number. He did build churches, that's true, but the number I have no clue about. Anyway, he says, throughout that time the Christians had the upper hand and dominated the Jews. Allah aided them against the Jews because they used to be closer to the truth than the Jews, even though both groups were and still are disbelievers. May Allah descend on them. This is not something you would expect a Christian to say, and probably not a Jew, maybe a Jew, but we're not told to curse people. That's God's business. We're not supposed to pray that a curse descend upon anyone. But this is more the primitive thinking of a Muslim. Anyway, continue on. It says, when Allah sent Muhammad to those who believed also in Allah, angels, books, and messengers in the correct manner. So they were the true followers of every prophet who came to earth. They believed in the unlettered prophet, the final messenger and the master of mankind, who called them to believe in the truth in its entirety. And they make a big deal about him being unlettered. But reading the Quran, you'll understand, well, it's not a surprise, because much of his information seems to be from word of mouth. So, I mean, I don't know what their deal is. And you'll see Mormons bragging about how ignorant their prophet was, lack of education. But anyway, he goes on and says, this is why they had more rights to every prophet than his own nation, especially those who claim to follow their prophet's way and religion, yet change and alter his religion. Which is funny, because Islam is not exactly what previous prophets taught. They believe, well, anything they taught was essentially abolished by Muhammad's coming. Anyway, they say, furthermore, Allah abrogated all laws that were sent down to the prophets with the law he sent Muhammad with, which consists of true religion and shall never change nor be altered until the commencement of the last hour. Even though Muhammad abrogated some of the things in the Quran abrogates parts of itself, but let's pretend that'll never change or never be altered, or at least never was. But anyway, let's go on. Muhammad's religion shall always be dominant and victorious all over other religions. This is why Allah allowed Muslims to conquer the eastern and western parts of the world and the kingdoms of the earth. Now, last time I checked, they still haven't conquered China, Japan. They managed to get Indonesia, but not those big countries. They still don't have Russia. They still don't have Europe. They're trying to get Europe by populating it. They still have no chance with North America or South America. Still very non-Muslim countries. And even to this day, the Jews in Israel are making the Muslim nations miserable, just massacring them, despite having the numbers stacked against them. But anyway, let's go on and pretend that's true also. He says, furthermore, all countries submitted to them. They demolished the Kisra, the king of Persia, and destroyed the Caesar, or Tsar, ridding them of their treasures and spending these treasures for Allah's sake. All these occurred just as the Prophet told them it would when he conveyed Allah's statement. And then they quote this passage. And anyway, I'm not going to read it. Anyway, it says, therefore Muslims are the true believers in Isa. The Muslims then acquired Sham from the Christians, causing them to evacuate to Asia Minor, to their fortified Constantinople. The Muslims will rise above them until the day of resurrection. Indeed, he, Muhammad, who is truthful and received the true news, has conveyed to Muslims that they will conquer Constantinople in the future and seize its treasures, which, to be fair, they did. But they didn't get anywhere past Constantinople. I mean, they tried to get into other countries. They raided them and largely failed. And in fact, after this time, they would lose Spain, completely lose Spain, because the Spanish would take back their land. Otherwise, they would maybe take Albania because of population and stuff like that. But now Albania is largely atheist. So, whoops, crash and burn right there. Anyway, going on. He refers to this. This is threatening the disbelievers' torment in this life and the hereafter. And they talk about the day of resurrection and the severe torments in this world. This is what Allah did to the Jews who disbelieved in Isa and the Christians who went to the extremes over him. Again, extremes over him. The fact is, Jesus did not object to it. He taught it. But again, we're accused of being the extremist here. Allah tormented them in this life. They were killed, captured, lost their wealth and kingdom. Their torment in the hereafter is even worse and more severe. Anyway, he rambles on about this. Anyway, this is Brahim Selassie, or the Catholic One, here on YouTube.